So what's going on with the Premier's office right now here in Ontario? I don't know. I suspect you don't know. People in that office don't seem to know. And it's time that we get down to the bottom of this because Ontarians deserve to know. Hey everybody, how's it going? Thanks for stopping by. So if you were following the news last week, you saw that not only did Doug Ford shuffle his cabinet, with a major shuffle, shifting around dozens of people, adding people into cabinet, taking people out, shifting important roles, not just minor positions, but Minister of Finance, among many, many others, really trying to push the reset button on this disaster of a first year for his government, which has seen him become one of the most unpopular premiers in the country, even though he's one of the newer premiers in the country. And it sees him as more unpopular than the very, very, very unpopular Kathleen Wynne, who took, of course, many years to become that unpopular. Doug Ford's trying to press the reset button, but as many of us noted, either here on this channel or on social media, Doug Ford is driving a lot of this contention and discontent and failure out of his own office. And it wasn't so much about his cabinet picks, but about the general vision of his government that emanated from the Queen's Park office of the Premier. And that had a lot to do with Dean French. Dean French was Doug Ford's chief of staff, ex-chief of staff, and much like Gerald Butts with Justin Trudeau, it's really the case that this appointed figure was among the most powerful people in the government. Probably more powerful than any individual cabinet minister, more powerful than Fideli or Mulrooney or McLeod, or Elliott. Any of these figures, they were more powerful than those cabinet ministers. And French had an immense amount of power and influence over Doug Ford. But as we saw, one of the key discontents within the Conservative Party was between the caucus and cabinet on the one hand and French on the other, with a lot of people, even those loyal to Doug Ford, suggesting that French was souring the relationship, that he was vindictive, that he was aggressive, that he fostered a bad work environment. The whole narrative we heard about how, PC MPPs were always supposed to clap and almost like trained seals in a sense. And a lot of them didn't like that. That was at least allegedly a French directive. And so there was this time where it came down to the fact that there was a divide growing. Now, the dam seemed to have broke last week when French made two sort of patronage appointments, giving woefully unqualified people very high-paying and important positions representing Ontario, allegedly without Ford's knowledge, and then that led to the retraction of those appointments and French's resignation. And, French has said that, I am leaving, whether it's a resignation, aka you get fired but you're allowed to save face, or a resignation, an actual resignation, we're not sure. But he left and he said he's returning to the private sector. And so I was going to make a video, today, kind of recapping this whole series of events and saying, like, this is a big deal because in many ways it leads to a potential shift of direction that is bigger than the cabinet shuffle. Now, ultimately, my view is still that, the reason the Ford government is failing is because it fundamentally lied to voters about its mandate. It sought a mandate based on no cuts and on a relative moderate conservatism, and then has kind of thrown that all out the window once it got its majority, and left voters without an ability to respond, without anger, right? That's the only thing people have, is booing Doug Ford at Raptors games and protesting, because there's no constitutional mechanism to deal with the fact that he won by lying. So I was going to go through all of that, but if you read the news today, Robert Benzie, one of the most respected people covering Ontario politics, he does it for the Toronto Star, basically had a report today about how Dean French showed up to Queen's Park. And you can read into it. Some people said, well, he just showed up to say goodbye to folks, or he showed up to clean out his office, but it looks like he's saying to people, I'm still in charge. PC staffers were calling the media, not knowing what was happening. Was he supposed to be here? Is he actually gone? Do we know what's what? And so at this stage right now, it's not even 100% clear what the status of the chief of staff of Doug Ford is. It's likely the case that he's been laid off, or he's resigned, whatever you want to call it. That's likely the case. But I mean, I don't even know. At this stage, I don't even know what's happening. And this is all based on the fact that this government has no organized kind of approach to politics and to its own operation. It's very clear that they won on a series of disingenuous promises, and that they were going to make it up as they go along with a general position to attack workers, and attack social programs, attack students, attack people with disabilities, attack, tenants, really attack anybody that doesn't fit that kind of core PC position of who do we support, aka developers, wealthy people, etc., etc., etc. And that's where we're at. And so when they go off track on any of these things, even a little bit, the government shows just how disorganized it is. It shows a government that has plummeted in popularity after only a year. It shows a government that has severe dysfunction between the Premier's office and the caucus and the cabinet. It shows extreme, difficulty in trying to promote a vision because its vision was never actually disclosed to the people. And so the backlash that the government is getting is immense, and the backlash that individual MPPs, especially in ridings that were narrow victories, like there are some PC MPPs that won their seats, but only by a few percent, or a couple thousand votes or less, and they're vulnerable next time, 100%. So all of these tensions are rising, and it's all a testament to the fact that none of us really know what's going on in our own province. None of us know that, and it's really troubling because Ontarians deserve to know that. Ontarians deserve to know the course of their government. They deserve to know the course of the government in a legislative sense, but also in a personnel sense. We deserve to know what's going on in the Premier's office in terms of his key staffing appointments. His chief of staff and other key advisors. We deserve to know that because those people have immense power and influence. And even though they're not elected, the reality is that they have just as much influence as some of the most important cabinet ministers in the government. So Doug Ford owes us transparency. He owes us that. We need to know exactly what happened, the nature of the conflict with Dean French. Did he resign or was he fired? All of these things we deserve to know here in Ontario. But again, I want to underline this. Dean French leaving is a big deal. It's a bigger deal than the cabinet shuffle that happened, even though that cabinet shuffle was also a big deal. I think it's a bigger deal because, as I noted, so much of the government's policy agenda is being driven not through the caucus, not through the membership of the Ontario Progressive Conservative Party, but through the Premier's office, and specifically, French and Ford sort of working together on that. With French gone, there is a chance that there'll be some change of direction, at least on the fringes, maybe not at the core issues. But at the end of the day, the flaw with this government is that they won by lying. And they won by lying to voters, but their fundamental basis of the government's vision is wrong. It's all based on this idea that, Ontario is inefficient, Ontario spends too much, and it doesn't have enough business activity, and therefore we need to cut our costs and become more competitive and become leaner and meaner. And that means that students have to lose their OSAP, and it means that people with autism have to suffer, and it means that any one of these factors, the guaranteed annual income pilots that were promised by Ford to be saved, were cut. On and on and on. All of this is supposedly under the mandate of saving the future of Ontario's, finances. But that's bull. Because as many people have said, Ontario spends low amounts per capita. We are a low per capita spending province. And so in some ways, the issue in Ontario is, it's not that we spend too much, it's that we don't tax enough. We don't tax the wealthy enough in this province. And because we don't tax the wealthy enough in this province, it leads to deficits. Because conservative governments, and even the previous Liberal government, were too afraid to do what was needed to be done, which was raise the goddamn taxes on the goddamn rich. That's what was needed. So that's where we're at. That's where we're at right now. This is a fluctuating situation. I don't know what Dean French is doing. I don't know if he's chief of staff. I don't think he is, but he seems to still think that he's the guy pulling the strings. All of this is a testament to our broken, dysfunctional government. and that ultimately what we need is much more transparency and much more professionalism from our government. So guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, I would hope that you'd like, comment, and subscribe. Doing so helps to spread the message, to let people know about the sheer chaos going on in our provincial government, and to let people know that Ford is not unpopular because of an elite conspiracy or because a left-wing media against him or any of the other lies that will come out of conservative and alt-right media, but simply because he's disorganized. He's not actually achieving anything of note, and his policy drive is not in concordance with what he ran on. And so all of these things are what's making him unpopular. And people need to hear this narrative. People need to know that Ford is only unpopular because he lies to Ontarians every single day. Because every single day his government operates, it operates in discordance with what he originally ran on. And if you can, I would appreciate your support on Patreon. Supporting me there brings more quality and quantity to this channel, and in so doing helps to challenge what I feel is an alt-right and far-right dominance on YouTube by bringing a solid left-of-center voice to the platform.